Sports Talk New York with your hosts Mark Rosenman and AJ Carter. Sports Talk New York is sponsored in part by Prince Associates, Send in the Clowns, The Phoenix Tube Company, CelebrityTrips.com, the law firm of Decolator Cohen and DePrisco, Solomon Jewelers, and Relish Restaurant of Kings Park. Here are your hosts, Mark and AJ.
Joining us now is a man who for the last 40 years has recorded the visual history of the greatest sport on ice. During that time, he has covered over 5,000 NHL exhibition and regular season games. He's covered a total of 33 Stanley Cup deciding games. In addition, he has shot 30 All-Star games, 4 Olympics, over 190 international hockey games. He has served as a team photographer for the New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, Philadelphia Flyers, and New York Rangers. You really could say he is the Wayne Gretzky of hockey photographers. It is a pleasure to welcome the man whose new book, Hockey's Greatest Photos, the Bruce Bennett Collection, a must for any hockey fan, Bruce Bennett, to WLIE 540 AM Sports Talk New York. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you so much. Wow, with all those games, I'm feeling really tired right now, actually.
And you know what? I feel you, because I'm not even close to that, and it is a grind, and we're going to get into that because your career has spanned so many years and so many games. The book has not just one, but 2 forwards. One by the great one himself, Wayne Gretzky, and the other one by Marty Brodeur. In the Gretzky one, he stated that if he had to describe you in one word, it would be professionalism. He continued to say he is respected as anyone in the industry. He's the kind of guy that gets all the pictures done and everything you need without being in the way. He has an uncanny sense for staying out of the middle of everything and getting the picture he needs to make the event that much better. I have seen firsthand the swarm of photographers at various games and events. Wayne calls it an uncanny sense. In my opinion, I have to imagine that is an acquired skill. So the question is, how are you able to do that, get the picture, stay out of the way, and get the job done?
Honestly, I think that's our role as photojournalists and as journalists, is to basically get the job done and not be seen, not to be heard from, not to get in the way, not to block players, let's say, when they're skating with the Stanley Cup. And really that comes out of experience. The more games you shoot, the better you get, and the better you get dealing with the athletes and getting the shots without being a part of the event. You know, you should be just like a fly on the wall.
You know, the other forward I found interesting, not only because it's from another superstar of the sport, but because of his father. Dennis Brodeur, who was a Canadian photographer, is acknowledged as one of hockey's finest photographers. How gratifying is the fact that his son gives you the utmost respect, and he is the son of someone who was in the same profession. So I have to imagine, getting the accolades from Marty might hold special meaning to you.
You know, the way it shaped up, the way the whole book shaped up, or the forwards in the book shaped up, is I had a long relationship with Gretzky for the last 30 years or so, and so that was a natural to have his name attached to the book. When we went to go to do a French language version, the publisher said, we need a different cover, and if you know anybody, any French-Canadian hockey players, that would be great to have them do a forward. And Marty was an obvious one. I've known him, I knew his father for many, many years. We worked together. Whenever I would go to Montreal, we would hang out. And I knew Marty from the time he was a young boy, 8 or 10 years old, going with his father to Montreal Canadian games. And it was just a natural. And his words, look, everything that Wayne said about me was just, it was wonderful to hear those words. But Marty really brought in the experience of what it's like being a photographer and being with a photographer who covers NHL events.
It's also interesting because, as a photographer, I'm not sure you realize the impact you can have on a player. And Marty, in the forward, refers to several pictures that his dad took of goaltenders that he hung up on his wall and would constantly look at that and aspire to be that. Or do you ever, take a step back and realize that is the actual power of some of the photos that you take?
No, never. No, I don't know. I really don't think about it. It's kind of interesting when players come to you and say, "Oh, I remember this picture you shot of me," or that picture. And actually, when these forwards were done, both Brodeur and Gretzky had very strong memories of certain images, some of which I had shot and some of which other photographers had shot. But I think hearing their words and I think seeing the forwards before they were edited down to fit, I guess I did step back at that point and say, wow, these guys do take notice of images.
You know, it's interesting given the week that has been and the Mets playing the Dodgers. It's one of my all-time Vince Scully lines was at the very end of the Bill Buckner game, and basically the Mets scored the winning run. There was no talking, basically just flash cuts of the crowd, the Red Sox dugout, the Mets dugout, the celebration on the field. After almost 2 minutes of seeing all the pictures, Vince Scully breaks the silence and says, "They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, you've just seen 1,000,000 of them." I felt that same way looking through your amazing book. It seems that you went through great lengths to pick pictures that truly capture every emotion associated with the great game of hockey. What was the selection process for the close to 250 photos that made the book? How many photos did you have to review, and were there certain criteria for that photo to have made the book?
Yeah, it was nauseating. It was a long process, as I actually have shot over 2 million images.
Wow.
For purposes of this book, I actually looked through 600,000 or so. Some of them were in digital form up on the Getty Images website. Some I found, quite honestly, laying around the house on DVDs, in drawers filled with some slides that didn't transition over to the Getty Images office when they acquired my company 11 years ago. But basically, I started with 600,000. I was able to pretty quickly whittle it down to somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000, and then to 8,000, and then a very harsh cut going down to the mid 200s. There was a whole thought process that went back and forth between myself and the editors at the Hockey News who helped put the whole project together, and that was, if a photo wasn't that great, but it was a historic moment, should it be included in the book? And we debated that for some while until I pretty much came to the decision that those photos should appear, because maybe it's me who's being too critical, as I often am when I look at my own work. A lot of those historic photos mean something to someone, and they evoke emotions in people because they might have been at the game or it meant so much to their lives. So there are some photos in there that I'm not extremely proud of, but I guess it says I was there, and I know that those images are important to some people.
You know, it's interesting you brought that up, but for me, some of the most compelling photos in the book are the portraits. There's obviously, these are the product of your mind, not something that happened, organically in a game. A few that jump out to me is a young Steve Yzerman reading a Stan Fischler book on Gordie Howe. The symbolism there is just great. Billy Smith in full equipment sitting by a lake. John Van Beesbroek and Mike Richter squeezing into one jersey, and Rayo Ruotsalainen standing on a stool so he can be shoulder to shoulder with Willie Huber. With those particular pictures, did you have those ideas prior to heading to the rink, or did, once you get to the rink, those things happen?
With the portrait photography, a lot of those ideas came, they were basically a byproduct of having a discussion with an editor. Normally, or in many situations, it was with the editors at the Hockey News. And a lot of those shoots where those portraits were done, a lot of those shoots ended up on the cover of the Hockey News. So depending on which editor at the Hockey News I was working with, and there were many through the years, we would have a give-and-take conversation about this is what we could do, this is where we could shoot it. So it was really a collaborative effort on most of those things. And there were a couple, I guess, when I got on location, I would say, okay, well, this isn't going to work. Drop back and punt, because you got to come out of it with something, and let's see what happens. You know what? Let me point, because I'm just looking at it on my wall now. Richter and Van Beesbroek squeezed into the jersey, right, the hockey jersey. It was actually my assistant who said to me when we were on location, hey, why don't we take this jersey? At that point it was $125. Let's take this jersey and let's cut it and try to squeeze these two guys into the back of it, and or squeeze these guys into it. And I was like, oh my God, $125. I placed a call to the Hockey News, and I said, look, we're going to kill this jersey. Would you approve the expense so that we can try to get a photo? And they did. It worked out to be just a great shot.
Bruce, A.J. Carter, you mentioned looking through actual film images and digital images, which talks about one of the biggest changes in photography over the past 30, 40 years, which is the shift to digital from film. How has that shift changed the way you go about your business?
Oh, it's just a tremendous change. Not only the difference in the camera bodies themselves, the physical part of it, but without film. Just for instance, Stanley Cup final, the teams parade around the ice, and you used to be stuck at 36 frames, and then you'd have to rewind. So you typically have two camera bodies, and you'd set one camera to rewind while you're shooting 36 frames in the other one, and then trying to get time to pull out rolls of film. Now you could go on the ice and shoot over 1,000 pictures without reloading. There's so much. Instantly on location, instead of waiting days, you can see that you actually missed that shot. Used to take 2 or 3 days before you knew that you screwed up. Now you know right away that you're a failure.
So to me, that's the biggest difference, the advantage of digital photography, that you can look instantly and say, there's a problem with the shot, let's do it over right then instead of having to go back to the dark.
But once it happens live, that's a horrible feeling when you look back and say, oh boy. It's interesting also because you mentioned the live action shots, and you take a look at some of the game action that you've included in the book. The iconic Stephane Matteau goal, Shanahan's 600th goal, Bobby Nystrom's goal for the Islanders' first Stanley Cup win, Crosby's 100th point as a rookie, the Cloutier-Salo fight. How many shots do you take in an average game, and how much do where the team's PR department play into the ability to capture the key moments of a game?
Well, first question, normally we'll shoot about 1,000 frames a game.
Wow.
And out of those 1,000 on game night itself, we'll put up on Getty Images and send out to our clients. We'll send out about 25 or 30 images on what we call a live basis. And then the days after the game, we'll pick through and we'll try to find stock images, which are good, individual pictures of players or some action that we've missed. And those images are good for, let's say, trading cards or 8x10 products. Photo position-wise, I always have the preferred position of being ice level because I want to see the player's eyes. Everyone thinks it's about capturing the puck and the puck bulging the net, and that's wonderful. But if you want to see what hockey is all about, you look at the players' eyes. You look at their faces. You can see which players are engaged and which players are looking at themselves, the reflection of themselves in the glass to make sure the uniform is laying correctly on themselves. But a deep corner where you're sitting pretty much where the goalie's line intersects the boards, from those positions, shooting through those crummy little holes, with the right lens combination, you can shoot the whole ice. And that's really the idea, to make sure you're in a photo position where you can see the entire ice. And the PR guys around the league, usually, if those positions are available, I usually get one of those spots.
Do specific rinks have specific drawbacks as far as lighting and the way you have to adjust your setting because of poor lighting or overlighting?
Well, it's less of an issue now with the higher-end digital cameras because these cameras are very capable of shooting in lower light situations. Most of these NHL arenas are now switching over to LED lighting, which is brighter and stronger and cleaner and a lot cheaper to use for the arenas. And the best arenas, let's say, Barclays right now, since I was there recently, is probably the brightest in the NHL right now. More importantly than being bright, it's edge to edge, corner to corner, the same exposure. You go into Madison Square Garden and center ice is one exposure and behind the nets is another exposure. And that's where the digital, being good with digital imaging and cleaning up those areas that are dark on the computer, that's where that skill comes into play.
there are also a lot of fun photographs in the book. Some of my favorites are Burt Reynolds, Goldie Hawn, and Mark Messier in Buffalo. How that came about, I have no idea. Nick Lidstrom with the Conn Smythe and his son on the top shelf of his locker, and Kenny Linsman with a rat on his shoulder. Do you have a favorite photo from the book?
Well, out of the 246, I guess about 246 of them are my favorites. But there's a shot from the early days. The old black and whites, I guess, strike me a little bit differently. Bobby Nystrom scoring in 1980 and jumping up in the air, celebrating, and I guess because I get this question often, I guess my number one photo is Denny Potvin throwing the hip check into Guy Lafleur and flipping him upside down. And that's been probably my favorite photo through all the years.
Are there any other sports photographers' work that you admire, and does each photographer have his own specific style?
There are many photographers that I have looked up to through the years. Walter Yost, famous Sports Illustrated photographer by the name of Joe DiMaggio, who was my mentor for many years, and Mel DiGiacomo, who shot a lot of hockey before me. These guys do all develop their own sense. And strangely enough, most photographers have multiple sports that they shoot and they're good at. And I learned early on that what I know best and what I'm qualified to shoot is hockey. I can hold my own in a lot of other sports and I can do okay, but I know the sport intimately, and I'm just better at it, and I've developed my own style through the years.
Where's the best place for people to get this amazing new book, Bruce?
The best place right now is Amazon, both in Canada and in the U.S. Amazon, and actually I've heard some people have actually started to find it at Barnes & Noble as well.
Bruce, thanks so much for your time tonight. More importantly, thanks so much for tremendous work of capturing the sport of, in my opinion, the greatest sport there is, and capturing the true essence of the sport.
Thanks so much. Thanks for giving me the call.
Our pleasure. Bruce Bennett, the Wayne Gretzky of photographers. Bruce Bennett's Hockey's Greatest Photos. The Bruce Bennett Collection available now in bookstores and online everywhere.